Hi guys, and thanks for joining me today. If you're new here, I'm Marilyn, and if you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. Now, I recently made my very first quilt block, and I'm in the process of making my very first quilt. Something I realized early on in the process was it's a little bit hard for me to keep track of all the parts and pieces that go in each block. Well, not too long ago, I was watching Becky of Power Tools with Thread, and she had this thing on her wall where she was keeping all the parts and pieces to an entire quilt. Well, that made me think, what about making an easel style one for a tabletop? So I reached out to my friend Crafting on a Dime with Shay Shay to ask her, what was that wall made out of? Come to find out, these are called design boards, and they've been around for years and years. When I started making mine, I thought I would make them with ribbon, with beautiful fabric, polka dots, floral. What I discovered in the process of making this video was that for me, plain is perfect. Not only is plain perfect because it allows you to see without any distraction all the pieces of your quilt block, plain is perfect because it was $2 or so to make this and it only took a few minutes. If you're interested in seeing my process, sit back, relax, and let's get started. If you're going to make your design board like I did, you're going to need a thin wood panel and some fusible fleece, or you can use batting or flannel as well. I found this 12-inch by 12-inch wood wall hanging that would work perfectly at the Dollar Tree store. You could remove the twine and you're good to go. Those two little holes won't cause a problem, and for only $1.25 plus tax, you have the wood to make a design board. There's also wood panels on Amazon if you don't find what you need at the Dollar Tree store, or if you just prefer to order what you need online. Here's 5 boards for only $7.99, making each board about $1.60 plus tax. This 1/16 inch board might be a little thin, so I would increase your cost a bit per board to $2.60 plus tax, and I would order these 1/8 inch boards instead. That's the width of the boards that I use. Since I have a laser and a ton of these 1/8 inch project boards, I just cut my own wood for my quilt block design boards. I couldn't get 2 pieces at 12 by 12 inches, so I cut mine at 11.5 by 11.5 inches so that I wouldn't waste a lot of wood. In addition to your board, you're going to need some type of fabric. I'm using fusible fleece since that's what I had on hand. I also love that the adhesive is already on it, so I don't need to mess with glue or a spray adhesive. If you don't have this, but you have a thinner batting or flannel on hand, I've seen people use that as well. Here's the square that we just cut out, and the cut is really good. It looks really nice, and if I rub my hands on it, there's really no charring that comes off. If you want to do this with a diode laser, you can, but because diode lasers have to go more slowly to get through the wood, you might have charring on the side. If you do, I'd recommend just take a baby wipe or something like that and clean that charring off so you keep your project clean. This is the fusible fleece that I'm going to use. I got this off the Amazon. I think this is the medium weight, but I'll link this in the video description below just in case you're interested. And I did cut this down to 12 by 12. It's a little bit larger than what my board is, but I like to make it a little bit larger so I can trim it down later and get it to fit just perfectly. So with fusible fleece, you have this kind of rough, bumpy side. That's the side with the adhesive on it. And then on this side, you have a fairly thin fleece. So I'm going to go ahead and put mine with the bumpy side down. Remember, that's the adhesive. And then I'm going to put this under my heat press. You could use just your basic iron as well, but since my heat press is larger than this, I can just do it all in one press. The instructions on Amazon say to press this on using a cotton setting, which they say is high heat. On my heat press, I use 325 and I leave it on for 15 seconds. Because some of the fusible fleece is going to be exposed, I want to make sure that I have something under it to protect the pad of my heat press. So whether that is a Teflon sheet, a piece of parchment paper, either of those will work, but I'm going to use this Teflon sheet. So we're just going to lay it down, make sure that the whole board is covered, and then I want my board in the center of my heat press. I think that just gives more even pressure. I do have this Teflon cover already on my press, but I don't want to have to take it off to clean it. So on the top, I'm going to put some parchment paper just in case I get a little bit of that glue through this side. Once again, we're going to do this at 325 for 15 seconds. Now I want to let that cool off a little bit so that I can test it and make sure it's really stuck down well. But I don't want to try to pull it up now. If I pull it up now and that's still kind of melty and soft, of course it's going to come up. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off and let it cool down for 3 or 4 minutes. I think this is stuck down nicely. Now, I don't want to pull on it because wood is a porous surface, and so I could pull this away much easier than if it's stuck to fabric. But I think it's pretty good. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to use this side of the wood as a guide on where to cut. And I'm just going to cut the excess away. I love how crisp this turns out when you do it this way. So instead of pre-cutting that fusible fleece, or whatever you use, whether it's backing, flannel, or anything else. So here's a functional design board. But of course we want to make it cuter, so we're going to trim it out with some fabric. But let's go ahead and test it out. We're just going to place our piece down on it. And it is not falling off. I'm trying to make it fall off. It's not falling off. That's going to work great. And look at those nice crisp edges. They look so good. Now this one was an epic fail, so I'm fast forwarding through it, but I did want to tell you what I tried so that you don't waste your time and money trying it too. I used a wide piece of polyester ribbon that had heat and bond on the back. I pressed half the width of the ribbon on the front of the board and half of the width of the ribbon on the back of the board. And then I went around the board and finished off the edges like you were wrapping a birthday present. I could tell shortly into this project that I was going to hate the results, but I kept going so that I could have a completed project board. At this point, I am just about ready to give up on these. Look how terrible that looks. You can see all the texture, you see all the weightiness. That looks terrible. But I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try a fabric one. So let me show you the fabric that I have. It says pink polka dots, and you might be able to see there's a seam right here. I sewed several strips together, and I want to show you. I cut this out on my laser. Here's what's left of it. It cut just beautifully. I've really grown to love how my CO2 laser cuts fabric. I used the pink fabric to make my own bias tape, and then I added heat and bond tape to the back side of the bias tape where it would come in contact with the board. Once I pressed from the center of one side to a corner, I removed the other piece of paper so that I could press it to the back side of the board. Then without pressing the corners, I went ahead and pressed it down on the side of the board that's to the right. Then I went back and pressed down the corner piece like I was wrapping a present. This was working out much better than the polyester ribbon did, so I followed the same process to finish off the entire design board. Once I was all the way around, and to finish it off nicely, I cut the excess fabric off and folded it under to create a nice finished edge. Then I worked to line up the end of the fabric so that it would end evenly with the fabric where I started. After pressing the back side of the board, I added some more heat and bond tape where my fabrics overlapped to have a nice smooth finish. I also cut some really small triangles to add to my corners where there was overlapping fabric. After making my way around the board, I went back to remove the paper on the tape and pressed it again. I did the same process to finish off the back of the board. That is really cute. This turned out so much better than using this polyester ribbon. So much better. Even though I think that pink polka dot's adorable, I think having something around the perimeter like that's a little distracting. So I'm going to do one more. The last one that I made was simply using the square board. Then I put the fusible fleece on, heated it, flipped it over, and trimmed the edges. And I think this simple board is my favorite. I like how there's no distractions. I like how there's no color mixing in. And even though I love color and I like to add embellishments and make things pretty, I honestly think that's my favorite. And these are going to stack up really nicely. If you make quilt blocks and you haven't done one of these, try it out. Let me know what you think. Let me know also, did you use ribbon? Did you use fabric? Or did you just leave yours plain as well? So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And until my next video, bye-bye.